Hi, welcome to EduSat TV. I am Professor Y.S. Alone from School of Arts and Aesthetics, and today I will be discussing on the emergence of neo-Buddhist visual culture, which is relatively a new phenomenon in the country, and one needs to understand and study as to how certain visual pattern emerge out of certain cultural conditions, as well as how there is a whole historicity attached with this kind of a visual culture, and it is deeply rooted in the social, cultural and religious aspects of the community, and also so much related with the with the idea of assertion and making a new space for oneself in a whole gambit of visual culture in India. Now, to start with, we need to understand the role of Anagarika Dhammapal, who had come to India from Sri Lanka, who was a Buddhist monk, and he wanted to visit rather Bodh Gaya shrine, and he went to Bodh Gaya during Britishers' time, and he wanted the Bodh Gaya shrine to be revived, and during that time it was a very different situation. Then then also he started Mahabodhi Society in India, and with that he began the revival of the Bodh Gaya shrine, and that is how there is also an emergence of Buddhist archaeology which started by Cunningham, because Cunningham used the travelogue of Chinese traveler and went to places wherever the Chinese traveler had gone, mainly Yuan Chuang and Yixing, and he discovered number of Buddhist sites, and he recorded those Buddhist sites, and even on the way whatever he saw he recorded those things, and that is how there is a Buddhist archaeology which takes shape in colonial India, and in general there is also an emergence of archaeology as a discipline which was very much imperial oriented during those days, but nevertheless it played an important role in understanding culture of India's past, and there has been an interest in such ideas. Then another important thing which one has to understand is the contribution of the Oriental scholarship, and there has been a very rediscovery of the Sanskrit text, and rediscovery of the ancient text in India, and their translations and everything started taking place, whereas Rhys Davies was instrumental in translating many Buddhist texts with the help of Sri Lankan monks. She was residing in Sri Lanka, and from there she began translating the Buddhist text, and that is how we have series of these translations in the form of Sacred Books of East, edited by Max Muller, and that is how we get lot of this text getting translated in English, and it came to the it could get access, other people also could get access to those texts, and they could read those texts in order to understand the historicity of India and to understand the nature of the religion in India. Now, interestingly, Buddhism was not a living tradition in India during those days. It was a dead tradition. It was living only in parts of India, such as in the hills region like Himachal, or the top regions, northern top regions of West Bengal, or parts of Assam and parts of northeast region. So, in the mainland it was not a living tradition at all. So, so there are those issues of interpretation also associated in the whole study of Buddhist past. And one of the important thing which one has to note in all these studies is that of the imperial viewpoint or the colonial viewpoint. And during the scholars who were predominantly from the West, saw Buddha very much close to the Christ, and then they wanted to investigate on those lines, and that is how the whole idea of mysticism, the mystic, the miraculous kind of a life, they manage to see in the text, and then it becomes very much part and parcel of the history or the understanding of Buddhism. But nevertheless, there is a very important thing which happened in colonial India during that time. That is the important contribution of Jagdish Kashyap, Rahul Sanskritayan, Dharmananda Kosambi and Bhadanta Ananda Kausalyan. These four people have played an important role, and their contribution you cannot just deny. All these four people, they decided to translate Pali Tripitak in Hindi, and let me tell you that Hindi translations are more close, more appropriate than any translations I have seen. I mean, there are a couple of problems always happen in the translation, but nevertheless English translations are equally good. But I find Hindi translations more close to the original Pali Tripitak because of the language affinity. And all these four people, they translated many of these Buddhist texts in Hindi, and that is how people could read about ancient Buddhist past through these translations. And then very interesting thing that happens in Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, there was this person called Ayoti Das, and Ayoti Das managed to interpret or understand the Buddhist past in a very different way in Tamil Nadu, and he launched the Buddhist movement in Tamil Nadu, and he found the group called Shakya group or Shakya Sangha. Of course, it is so much related with the Buddha's Shakya clan, and he made the untouchable community to realize that the progressive nature which exists in the Buddhism is the real religion for their emancipation and for their progress. And then he had a very good relation with Alcott and P.L. Narsu. Now, interestingly, Ayoti Das was instrumental in creating this the Tamil Dravidian identity, but his contribution is completely denied in the Tamil Nadu, and even person like Periyar Ramaswamy, he derives lot of ideas from Pandit Ayoti Das, but does not acknowledge Pandit Ayoti Das. That is a very interesting thing, and even the Dravida movement in the entire south does not wish to acknowledge the contribution of Pandit Ayoti Das, and Pandit Ayoti Das read those ancient literature of Tamil Nadu, mainly texts like Mani Mekhalai, very differently, or even the other Tamil texts very differently, and try to study Buddhism, and he interestingly he observes that the kind of ritual practices are the rituals which are being followed in Tamil Nadu. They had Buddhist past, and majority of these were based on the Buddhist on the Buddhist practices. So, then there is another person, P.L. Narsu, who was a physicist and turned to Buddhism, became Buddhist and started propagating Buddhism, because he found Buddhism very close to the sciences. I mean, and in general, what one notices is that since Buddhism does not believe in idea of soul, the idea of rebirth of soul, or the idea of divinity does not exist. So, for scientific community, for any science person, it would very much accord with the scientific laws, scientific principles, and Buddhism talks about idea of evolution and does not talk about idea of creation, whereas all other theologies, they talk about idea of creation. So, there is these are these fundamental difference, and therefore, P.L. Narsu finds it very close to the sciences, and then he goes into in studying Buddhism, and he writes the book called The Essence of Buddhism. And then comes the role of Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was a architect of Indian Constitution. He was born in untouchable family and the greatest intellectual India has produced. He wrote on economics to politics, sociology, religion, history, development, planning, etc. And he was the first person to present the critique of imperial discourses, the Brahmanical discourses in the Marxian discourses. And interestingly, he declared his intention of religious conversion, and the last book he wrote was The Buddha and his Dhamma. And interestingly, in the last phase of his life, he learns musical instrument like violin and takes painting lessons from Parab, who went on to become Dean J.J. School of Arts in later. He was the bitterest critic of Congress, Gandhi and Brahmanical cultural nationalism. Then problems in projections and writings of meta-narratives, he identifies that there are problems in projections and writings of meta-narratives of the dominant caste Hindu society, and how it does not empower any other community to be part of it. Now, interestingly, though in 1956 Dr. Ambedkar got converted to Buddhism along with his 500,000 followers, more than 500,000 followers, which happened in Nagpur on 14th October 1956 and subsequently on 16th October 1956 at Chandrapur, just 160-70 kilometers away from Nagpur. Now, the question is, are there any activities pre-1956 activities by Dr. Ambedkar? Now, this is something very interesting to look at. Now, in the year 1954, he goes to Agra in Chakipat area and establishes or inaugurates the Buddha Vihar. And now that building does not exist, but a new building has been constructed in place of old building, and quite beautiful building you can see on your screen. It is a concrete building, and it has a domical stupa as a roof, and there is an entrance and the interior is hollow. So, this becomes a very different kind of a visuality, very different than what has been done, but this is a recent one. And he establishes that the Buddha Vihar in Chakipat area. So, this is 1954. Then there is another place called Pulgaon near Wardha, and he lays a foundation stone for the construction of the Buddha Vihar at this place near Wardha. This is just 40 kilometers away from Wardha. There is a place called Pulgaon in the district place in the taluka place called Arvi of Wardha district. And this building, the foundation stone of this building was laid by Dr. Ambedkar, and it is very much written here, Ya Buddha Viharacha Konshila Samar, that the foundation stone of this Buddha Vihar was done by the architect of Indian Constitution, Bodhisattva Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar in 1954. And interestingly, this became a very important building in the history of the Neo-Buddhist visual culture. Then comes this magnum opus stupa. This was constructed at a place where Dr. Ambedkar had given Diksha or had converted to Buddhism in the year 1956, and this stupa was constructed just the entire construction of the stupa was just 20 years old. But there are phases of construction of this stupa, and a very beautiful one, and it is considered as the third biggest domical structure, domical roof in Asia. So, this has a very distinct look and has a distinct function, and what one notices is that the pillars in the circular area were derived from the designs of the pillars which exist in the Buddhist cave tradition of Maharashtra. And and then the four toranas have been placed like the way you have in Sanchi, and the interior space is hollow. Now, this is something very interesting, like in the ancient stupa structure, the interior, there was nothing called interior space, it was a solid structure. Whereas the modern Buddhist stupas, especially by the one which have been built by the followers of the Ambedkars, they are of hollow, from inside they are very hollow, and the interior space is used for the it is a utilitarian space. So, so for the congregation or for meditation or for pravachans or for the meetings, so all kinds of activities go on in this kind of images, in this kind of buildings. And if you see this, like as you can see the entrance, and then there is a stair to go up, and then there is a door to go down. So the basement and the and the first floor are this is how it is divided, and lot of activities go in this kind of places, mainly all the religious and social activities. These are the various views you can make out, and interestingly the lawn which is created all around the all around this building, all around this stupa building, you do notice the use of Chaitya arch, which was taken from Ajanta cave 19. So there is this borrowing of certain visual elements from the ancient tradition of Buddhism. Another interesting thing about this stupa is that it has become identity of Nagpur now, and like even the railways, as and when they start any train from Nagpur, so they always make use of this particular vastu to indicate the identity of Nagpur. So this became a very important landmark in the history of Nagpur city, and it is being visited by many. It is not just only Buddhists who visit, but there are a lot of people who come and visit this particular modern architecture, the Buddhist architecture. And on the day of Dhamma Diksha, which is celebrated annually, more again some 500 to 700,000 people come every year to this particular place, and it's always a very peaceful kind of a function that happens. There are lectures organized, public functions are organized, even the Chief Minister of Maharashtra is always a chief guest of this function, irrespective of any political party. So there is nothing called this party or that party. I mean, the Chief Minister of Maharashtra has to go and address people over there, and it also shows the secular credentials of the state mechanism. Another interesting thing on this particular day is that book exhibitions. A lot of book stalls are there, and the maximum number of books are sold on this particular day. And I must say that it is the highest in the country on a particular day. No any other day in the country will witness such a large number of selling of books. So, this is another landmark. Now, there are images made in front of these stupas, mainly the images of Dr. Ambedkar and Bhagwan Gautam Buddha. These two images are very much there, and they are very old one. Rather, these were made before the construction of the stupa, and they are still there as it is. Then you have I now move to other visuals, and this is a visual which you see on your screen during the night time when that particular day is celebrated. And then there is a Bodhi tree, and this Bodhi tree was brought from Sri Lanka. So, Sri Lanka has been the main source for having Bodhi tree in the country, like we have in Delhi, we have in Nagpur, we have in even in place like Dhauli, or even number of places all over India, and Sri Lanka has been very generously giving us those Bodhi tree saplings. Then there is this small structure which was created long ago in the complex of this Buddha stupa, and that is the Buddha the guest house for the residing of the monks. And what one notices is a very conspicuous use of the Chaitya arch and the Dhamma chakra, which shows, which creates a Buddhist identity. And then there is a hall around this which has been recently constructed, and what notices is the Chaitya arch as a part of its facade design. And now that is how it looks, and this is how it is painted now. Now this it was completed and then painted. Very simple use of paint. Color scheme has been has been too simple, and the Chaitya arch becomes extremely conspicuous as a part of its entrance design in order to mark the Buddhist identity. So, this is in the night during those days, and then we have interesting building which is located in Sanchi, on Sanchi hills, which was constructed by the Sri Lankans, and then here is a structure of the Milin College. Now, how it happens in Maharashtra, like this Milin College was constructed when Dr. Ambedkar was alive, and it was constructed by Dr. Ambedkar, and he used the Buddhist stupa structure as a domical roof to mark its Buddhist identity, because he named this college on the name of a great king Milin, or Indo-Greek king. His name was Milander, and he had a debate with one Buddhist monk called Bhikshu Naksen. So, he named that area after Bhikshu Naksen, and named this institute after King Milander. And he was instrumental. This happened in 1952-53, and this he used it to mark Buddhist identity, and that is how all the stupas and other structures in Nagpur and elsewhere, they come after the construction of the Milin College. So, this becomes a landmark in the construction of these monuments. Then this is the Ambedkar Law College, and again one can see how the Chaitya arch is used to denote its Buddhist affiliation. Then this is a hostel of Milin College, which was designed by Dr. Ambedkar himself, and he conspicuously uses the Chaitya arch as an entrance, and then the elephants greeting on the top. Here is a detail which one can easily see as to how two elephants are standing on the top with lotuses, and how the Chaitya arch is used as a part of its facade design. Then these are the kind of structures we get all around the campus of the Naksen Vihara, and this is the replica of the stupa, the Torana, Sanchi Toran, but not to its scale, but just a simple visuality has been made. And then we have this Ambedkar Sanshodhan Kendra at Aurangabad, which was constructed by Aurangabad Municipal Corporation, and then this building, though it's a very bad assemblage of architecture, But what one notices is that there is a deliberate attempt on the part of the designer to put those Torana structure as well as the arches as a part of its visuality in order to indicate certain Buddhist affiliation, and also the pillar, the lion capital pillar, now which is our national emblem. It has been kept, it has been placed here, this particular pillar. So, and then comes this is the interior of the at the entrance where there is a statue of Ambedkar, and now I come to this particular statue which you find generally right in front of the Buddha Vihars, which are quite different in the sense that any statue having a long forehead or a bald forehead or a bald head with thick spectacle and wearing a coat becomes Ambedkar. Whether that image looks like Ambedkar does not matter at all, and but it has its history. That is very interesting, that how this whole statue history comes, and then we have this Buddha Viharas and how that statue history comes. This is something which is quite interesting to observe. Now, this statue history of Phule and Ambedkar, its genesis goes in Kolhapur. This is the statue in Kolhapur made when Dr. Ambedkar was alive, and this is located in Bindu Chowk of Kolhapur. And interestingly, if you see, the date is that of 1950, and this is the best portrait statue of Dr. Ambedkar in the entire country. You do not see this kind of a powerful portraiture of Dr. Ambedkar anywhere in the country, and this is the most unique one, very unique one. This was made by a sculptor called Bala Chauhan, and this entire project was initiated by Madhav Bagal, who was from Maratha community. And that is very interesting as to how he gets convinced him and convinces even his own people around to finance this particular project. And he sees progressive characters, he sees lot of things in Ambedkar, and of course Ambedkar was also patronized by Chhatrapati Shahuji Maharaj of Kolhapur. So there is this definite lineage attached with this kind of a social movements and the social figures in the state of Maharashtra. And the statue of Mahatma Phule was made by Baburao painter. So these are the two interesting statues which are the landmark in the history of statues of the national leaders in the entire country, and the rest of the history is quite different. Now you can see three images of Ambedkar, very different one. The one is this particular image is the old one. This was made by Wagh, who was trained in at Sir J. J. School of Art and was very good academic sculptor. And on your screen in the center, again the same statue was made by Wagh. Now interestingly, the hand at the back comes in the front and holding a constitution. Now this was made for Chandrapur in 1972, and interestingly, the then Prime Minister Indira Gandhi had come to inaugurate this particular statue, and this was the first statue inaugurated by Madam Indira Gandhi, Ambedkar statue. And the third one is placed at Aurangabad University, Babasaheb Ambedkar Marathwada Aurangabad University, where you notice that the raised index figure has come down, and Dr. Ambedkar is shown walking. So this becomes the third, and this particular one I am talking about, this one. So this becomes the latest addition. So there are this is an interesting history to it. And then there is a fourth one, and this has been created exclusively at Nagpur and at Pune. There are two places where these statues are installed, and they have been a project of Trailoka Buddha Mahasangha, where they argued that Ambedkar had wore this particular dress at the time of conversion, and he was ill and was old and holding a stick and walking. Now, I come to this particular statue at Reserve Bank of India, which is a very interesting one. It is an old statue which has been renovated with the life events of Dr. Ambedkar. Now, this is the event of 1956 conversion, and I see a definite connection between ancient and modern. What is that connection? In ancient India, we have a simple Buddhist stupas, then later times it gets covered, filled up with the narratives, and this is what exactly happens here also. So I do see that kind of a emergence of continuity in narrative even in the modern India in the public visual culture as a part of visual culture. Then this is the event related with the Kala Ram Mandir Satyagraha at Nagpur. This was the temple entry agitation which he made, and then this is the agitation of Mahar Tank, where the civil there was a fight over the civil rights, access to the civic places for untouchables in the pre-independent India. And then this is the famous speech he delivered at the International Buddhist Conference in Kathmandu, and that famous speech is that of Buddha or Karl Marx, which has been published and very much in public domain and academic domain. Then this is the giving of the constitution to Dr. Rajendra Prasad in the presence of Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru and Zakir Hussain. So these are some of the important narratives, and then these are the kind of Buddhist, these are the, this is the entrance of Ambedkar, Baba Saheb Ambedkar Marathwada University in Aurangabad, where the Chaitya Arch of Ajanta cave number 19 has been used as a part of public visuality in order to show affiliation, their Deccani affiliation. Then these are the monuments which were made at the time whatever agitation had happened, and as a memory of that agitation, renaming agitation, this monument was erected in front of that gate, and then there is a statue of Ambedkar right in its front. Then this is the Buddha Vihar of at Dapodi, which was constructed by Trailokya Buddha Mahasangha, and then it has a very different, completely different visuality, and once you enter, you do see a long tunnel kind of a pathway, but of course it is very much open in the middle, and then at the end you have image of Buddha, and then images of Sangharakshit, who was the founder of Trailokya Buddha Mahasangha, and Dr. Ambedkar at the at another site, and then of course this statue I talked about. And then you do find in the villages, these are the twin statues of Ambedkar and Buddha as a part of public visuality of the Neo-Buddhist community, and they exist not only in the state of Maharashtra, but also elsewhere, like state like Madhya Pradesh, Andhra Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh. So and it is gradually spreading with the spread of Ambedkarian ideas. Now, this particular thing, which is in a small village in the Chandrapur district, what is important is to see the use of the Dhamma Chakra very consistently to indicate its Buddhist affiliation. And of course, as I said, that whether the person looks like Ambedkar does not matter, it is only that blue coat, thick spectacle and a long forehead becomes an identity of Ambedkar. Then these are the kind of pillars which are used, replica of Sanchi pillar as used as a public, as a part of the decoration of a city in Aurangabad. And then we do have the calendars coming out very differently, where the images of Ambedkar and the life events are constantly used as a part of its design. And and you do see these kind of images there on the calendars. And interestingly, there is a very good assemblage of many visuals here, where the new Buddhist community would like to identify with the larger Buddhist community all over the world, all over the South, not only the South Asia, but also the entire world, entire Asia. And then these are some of the marks which have been given. Now, these are the images when Ambedkar got converted in 1956, but what is important is to see this particular image where the different traditions, it's a collage of different tradition, like something from Sri Lanka, something from Thailand, something from Burma, and it becomes a beautiful collage, and something from India. So that is a very quite an interesting combination, and here you do see image of stupa, Ambedkar, Buddha and Ashok, and then all the monks, Thai monks are coming out. So this is another way of looking at the things, and then I call this particular calendar something like, you do have the chakra, the tradition of chakra, mandala. So this forms the Ambedkar mandala. Though on the screen you can see image of Ambedkar in the center, and all other people are around. Though there are some people like Shivaji has nothing to do with Ambedkar as such, but you do have a extension of the social sphere of Ambedkar, and then how these images are centered around in order to communicate a message of Maitri, in order to communicate a message of emancipation. So, emancipation becomes a very important religious and political means in these kind of imageries. Now, I come to this, this is a dragon palace at Kamptee, which was made in collaboration with the Japanese. And then here we have monuments made by Uttar Pradesh government when Mayawati was ruling, and this has a completely Buddhist affinity, and very beautifully constructed monuments. And then we have these at the interior, we do have the image of Ambedkar and some of the narratives related with Ambedkar. And this is a long statue, very huge statue, and this is time of conversion, which does not depict the historical event as it is, but it has been constructed very differently. So this creates a different visual composition. Now, I come to this particular place. This is at Mumbai, called Chaitya Bhumi, which has a domical stupa structure, and in the inside there is this Ambedkar ashes are kept where people visit. And then comes, these are the private buildings which are there in Nagpur, and all these private buildings, they do have the Buddhist affinity, and that Buddhist affinity is shown by the construction of the arches. And then this is the Buddha Vihara, which was made, which was constructed sometime around 1978-79 at Nagpur, and very different one. So you have the Chaitya arch as a dominating design of the facade, and when you enter, you have a big hall, and it is devoid of ritualistic space. This is something very interesting. So this ritualistic space does not exist here in the interior, and what you notice is that people use this as a hall of congregation. And then you have another Buddha Vihar. This is Anand Buddha Vihar, again located in Nagpur, very tiny one, very small ones, but one can see how certain ancient Buddhist Chaitya arches are used as a part of its decorative pictorial vocabulary in order to show its Buddhist affiliation. And then we do have these lion pillars, Sarnath pillars, replicas of Sarnath pillars as a part of public visuality. Then some of the areas, the colonies where the neo Buddhist people stay and had made their presence felt. So, they constructed these kind of entrance doors with those Buddhist Buddhist designs. And then I come to the personal buildings. Now, these are the personal buildings where the use of Chaitya arches is very conspicuous, very conspicuous. You can see the use of the Chaitya arch, and even the Chaitya arch porch is also there. These are some of the important landmarks are the examples to create some kind of a visual affinity of the converted community. And then here we have these are some of the important symbols used, like the Dhamma Chakra on the building, and then you do have a tiny small building using the stupa arch as part of its entrance. So, one can notice as to how even within the small space, within not having so much of money and all, but even then certain designs are used. Then this is the Buddha Vihar at Bhandara, and in the front of this Buddha Vihar, interestingly, there are sculptures kept around. Now, these sculptures are not at all Buddhist, and when I had a talk with those people, they say ki, well, if the government wants, they can take these images, but they should construct the museum here and in Bhandara, and doesn't matter even if they are not Buddhist, at least they are safe in our locality, they are safe in front of our eyes, so we can preserve them. So, that is a very good idea of museumization. I mean, whether these, I mean, irrespective of the affiliation or the content, there is a sense of belongingness to the ancient antiquities, and it becomes the duty of every citizen to protect these ancient sculptures, ancient monuments, and all our, it is all part of our heritage. Now, this image of Buddha, which is a very Muchalinda Buddha, depiction of the Muchalinda Buddha, this is the only one I have seen in the when I have been seeing around and collecting lot of these things. And these are the buildings, and then these are the modern Buddha Viharas. You can see these are located in Nagpur, and interestingly, this is an interior. And one of the interesting part of this Buddha Vihar is that it is located on the same ground. So, at one corner you have Buddha Vihar, another corner there is a Ram Mandir, and it is a beautiful example of the civil society staying together and making their own statements and connecting, making their own affiliations in a civilized way. Now, when I come to this particular Buddha Vihar, which is located at Wardha, very tiny one, very tiny one, and you just cannot imagine how small it is with those shutters and all on the street. There are these two shutters, the way you see what you see at the in any of the building, and this particular vihara has a very interesting component. Now, this is though it looks like a small building, something like a shop, but it is not a shop. You can see at the back you have this circular apse, and then the front. This you have a torana, you have a design, the design of the Chaitya, and this is how the facade is made in that triangular land. This is located in Wardha, and a very interesting one, when once you enter inside, there is this huge Buddha image, and once you see this Buddha image, you do find a change in this particular Buddha image. I mean, this is nearly 4-storied Buddha image, and you do see a very different Buddha image here. It is with open eyes. Now, this is the only open-eyed Buddha image I have seen in any of the Buddha Vihars so far, and these people, they say that it has been conceived in accordance with what Dr. Ambedkar had conceived of the Buddha image, because Dr. Ambedkar had said that I want to see Buddha with open eyes, because he always kept all his eyes open, and did not shut his eyes and did not, I mean, he was always a engaged person, socially engaged person, and he would look at everyone. He would see each and everything or whatever was happening in the society during that time. So, that is an idea, and this idea is very well conveyed with these kind of images. Then we do have a very different kind of things that is coming up in and around Nagpur, that is, this is Mahasamadhi Bhumi, where there is a recreation of certain historical events. This is mainly the Dhammachakra Pravartan, where the Buddha is shown along with those 5 monks to whom he had given first sermon at Sarnath. And then interestingly, even a small architectural piece like what you see as a water tank, say for example, the water tank is also given a Buddhist affinity by making its roof like a stupa structure, and then the chhatris are kept all on its structure. So, this is very much visible in these kind of complexes. You can see that structure over there, and then here you have the details of these ones, and then Mahaparinibbana, again the historical event which is used, and then this is the this is a Buddha Vihar made at Pauni near Bhandara, around 100 kilometers away from Nagpur, and this has been made with the Japanese collaboration. And what is interesting is, I am quite amazed by this image. So, you have the image of Buddha, and then there is an image of Ambedkar in the Dhyana Mudra. It is something like Akshobhya, the way the Akshobhya images are made in ancient India. So, in a similar way the Ambedkar images are being made. I mean, this is the first kind of a representation. So, again it is a quite a different representation of Ambedkar. Then these are the entrances which have been made all around, and then there are the seminary at Shantivan Nagpur, where you do have the construction of the tiny Buddha Viharas having the domical stupa roof as a part of Buddhist identity, and then these buildings are used for the congregation purpose. Then this is another one which is circular and a quite different one, very different one, and as and when you travel to Nagpur, you can see those buildings even from the aircraft. So, they look very, this is Anand Buddha Vihar again, and then this is Siddhartha Vihara Thana in the district of Nagpur, which is quite different, though they are located in the village, but whatever means are possible, a trained architect is not involved. That is a very interesting thing. It is the people who would like to visualize certain things and then go for it and implement those their decisions with the help of engineers. So, that is what one observes. And then this is the interior of this particular Buddha Vihara, where the design of the arch is very different now. Now you can see almost triangular kind of a design rather than a very Chaitya arch, but a very reductionist kind of a Chaitya arch you find. And then this is the interior, where you find the images of, along with Buddha, you have the images of Chhatrapati Shahuji Maharaj, Mahatma Phule, Dr. Ambedkar, Savitribai Phule, and all the social revolutionary figures who mattered the most. And then this is the image being, this is the structure being constructed at Takad Ghat, a very fine structure, quite sophisticated. Of course, architect is involved, engineer is involved in these kind of buildings. Then these are the one created at Nagpur as part of the Ananda Kausalyan's memorial, and you do see the Ananda Kausalyan's image over here at Nagpur, and this is called, the place called Buddha Bhumi. And then this is the Dragon Palace at Kamptee, which was made with the help of Japanese Foundation, and it is a very beautiful place to visit, which became part of the Neo-Buddhist visual culture. and even the interior one can see, and then there are the images all around, and then these are the various localities, and these are the viharas under construction. And then you do have these tiny Buddha viharas located on the roadsides in the villages and in the other areas all around Maharashtra. And then you do see the way Japanese would like to conceive the Buddha images. And interestingly, these are the two images very kish kind of a things, and very polio ridden Buddha images you also see. This is at Mansar. There is a place by one society which is run by one Japanese, and this is where the images were made. And then here we do have even the personal buildings made like stupa buildings, and these are all the personal buildings, but it showing the Buddhist affiliation assertion. And then here is a celebration of 6th December at Shivaji Maidan, Dadar, and these are the kind of posters being made by the Neo Buddhist community. Ambedkar posters, then the Buddha posters and the Ambedkar posters, and then there are a number of such posters made where you do see the Buddhist affiliation, that there is a it says जग में बुद्ध का नाम है, यही भारत की शान है, because Buddhism exists everywhere outside India, and that gives the identity, India's identity, India's influence in other nation. So these are the kind of antiquities which are clubbed together and made a visual collage on these big posters, and then these are the designs of the marriage card. So this is all part of the popular imagery that goes in circulation quite along, and then these are the kind of posters which have been created, and that's how the imagery is made. And it is a continuous process. It is not stopping everywhere. There are people who are involved in creating the different kind of a visuality, and it is becoming very popular not only in Maharashtra but also elsewhere. And there is a urge. It is a inside urge of the public which is coming. And at times the followers of Ambedkar face the wrath of the caste Hindus in the villages while constructing these images, while installing the statues of Ambedkar, Phule and Buddha. And there is always a tussle, there is always a social tension, and there is always a violence. So the caste Hindu community has to think very differently, and it is a message to all others that how the constitutional ideals are to be realized in the form of the image as a role of its communication and everything. Thank you.